What if I told you one of the reasons why you are not taking action as comes to your idea is because of fear? In this video, I'm going to talk about a couple of things that happened to me personally when I realized they were mistakes, actually accelerated my growth beyond limits. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. And I'm going to talk to you about fear and the fact that you have allowed fear to talk yourself out of ideas. So I'm going to get right into this. Years ago, when I was living in Charleston, West Virginia, me being at that time just a basic magician and me wanting to be competitive with work, have work, and be able to perform a lot, I had an idea. I was hanging out with magicians, which was I was seeing advertising for shows, for not, well, I call them shows now, vocabulary. I was seeing advertising for events. And I thought to myself, because one of the common things I was hearing a group of magicians we were sitting around talking about, they were talking about the fact is like, where do you find work? And how do you do this? And how do you do that? And I think that there's work out there. Now, at the time, I was about 19, about to turn 20. And I remember this time in my life very, very well. And at that time I had made a decision. I said, you know what? I said, I'm gonna make a full-time living at this. I'm really gonna go at this. I'm gonna make a full-time living at this. And I had this fear of how I was going to find work. And I was hanging out with these magicians, and we were all, if you want to say complaining about the same thing, like, finding work and staying busy, and particularly the smaller area that I was in. Definitely love West Virginia in the summertime. It's one of the most beautiful places in the country. Grew up there, love my hot dogs with coleslaw. Don't ask. It's a West Virginia thing. But I was going through that, and I was like, there's got to be work here that I don't have to. At that time, I wasn't trying to move. So I saw there was different advertising for events, and I was talking to a magician, and I said, hey, I got this idea. And he said, what's that? I said, what if I just called this event here, and they're having something? I mean, I could do magic tricks with that. And I had 3 magicians in that setting talk me out of it. They said, oh, you don't want to do that. That's not the way you want to get work. You want to have your business card, have your really good show, and let people talk about how good you are, and let those calls come in, and that way you can easily book them and you can easily close. And I was like, okay. And I had this fear, and I was like, okay. And I left, and I thought about it, and I was like, I don't know. And then it was about 2 weeks later. I remember this exactly to this day. Any of y'all that are familiar with Charleston, West Virginia, there was a sign that was advertising an ice cream social, Stonewall Jackson High School. I remember this because I remember I had to drive past that sign when I had a day job, and I would drive and I would look at that sign, and I looked at it for about 4 times. I was like, that might be a place I could pitch. And they had the phone number. It's like, I think it was like, it's so funny now I said it out loud because I still do this. I still do this to some degree. It had a phone number, and it said, call if you want to be a sponsor. And I was like, well, it's a phone number. So I wrote down the phone number, and I thought, and again, it took me like a day. And this is part of the thing why you see some of the horror stuff behind me and it's a central theme, which is I want you to understand when you're watching any of these things, these series, is you got to put that fear behind you. Don't put it in front of you. If the fear is in front of you, the fear stops you from taking action. You can take that fear and put it behind you. And that particular day, I put the fear right behind me. And I made the call. And I talked to a woman, and I remember I had to do it in 2 phone calls. I remember, it's so crazy. I remember all this. I had to do it in 2 phone calls. And I talked to one woman, and she's like, well, we just do the media stuff for this. You need to talk to the organizer. And I said, okay. She goes, you need to call. And she gave me the woman's name. I don't remember the woman's name at the time. She gave me the woman's name, and then she gave me the phone number. And I said, okay. So I made call number 2. And I got that lady on the phone. I said, hey, I talked to so-and-so that that's doing the marketing and media with you. She's like, uh-huh. I said, listen, I'm a magician, and I have that date open. How would you think about me doing magic tricks at your event? She goes, really? I go, yeah. She goes, that might be cool. She's like, but we're not going to have a stage. I said, no. I said, ma'am, I do walk around magic. She goes, She goes, what do you charge? Now, she asked me that. I was not ready for the question. And I just said something that just fell out of my mouth. She's like, well, what do you charge? I said, $125. She goes, I think we can afford that. So again, and you would come and entertain? I said, yes. And she said, for how long? Now, at that time, I was still thinking in hourly segments. And I was thinking at the time, I mean, this was like 1999 or, maybe the year Y2K, so year 2000, right? At that time, I mean, minimum wage was like 4.50 an hour, if I remember right. So I was still thinking in those terms. And I said, well, the ice cream social runs from 1 to 4, right? And she goes, yes. I said, I'll do the entire thing. She goes, really? And I said, yeah. I mean, at the time, I mean, me having the job that I had when I was working for the government, I think my pay rate was working out at that time to only be like barely $10 an hour or something. And I was like, yeah. And I was the only thing I was thinking, I was like, I'm about to make in one day, or what I'm about to make something in 3 hours, what it would usually take me a day and a half to make working for the government. I said, yeah, that's a lock. So, I was 19, 20 years old, and she agreed. And I went and did the gig. Hot. It was really hot. Ice cream social. I so remember that. And I remember thinking, and I walked away from that, and I was like, why am I not doing more of that? And the reason why I'm telling you this story is because I had this fear that was stopping me, and then I was letting other people's fears stop me too. And the thing that I took away, and I remember this so well, I remember I was driving, and I remember, I locked the show. I mean, it was no real contract or nothing. I mean, it was just, I said, hey, I think we were still, just email was just starting to kind of become a thing. And I had the lady, I said, send me an email agreeing that you're going to pay me $125. I'll get there at 12:30. I'll stay till 4, blah, 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 blah. She did that. So that was a contract. It was a 3-sentence paragraph. And that was a lot. There was no deposit, and I showed up and she had an envelope, had $125 in it. And I was happy, got $125. Took some of that. I think I went and bought McDonald's or something on the way home. I was excited about that. Okay. But I remember thinking, because after I locked that, and I remember seeing that sign up there, because it was a couple of weeks before the actual event. And I kept driving by that sign. I was like, how else can I do this? And I remember when I was looking at that sign, I was reminded how many those 3 magicians told me not to do it. And I didn't listen. And then I started thinking to myself, I said, why? And I remember, forgive me for using this language, I said, why the hell am I listening to these 3 cats tell me how to market myself when these 3 people ain't paying my bills? I said, I have a goal or a dream to be a full-time entertainer. Why the hell am I letting these 3 people, they ain't working full-time as a magician. They got jobs and they're complaining that there's no work. And I just booked a $125 show after 2 phone calls. And I said, why am I doing that? And then that day it stopped. And the crazy thing about it stopping that day is I start booking more and more shows, kind of doing a similar technique. And the crazy thing is that to this day, I still to a degree do that. So I would say 60 or so % of my calendar, the leads are coming into me. People, know who I am, or they found me or something, they call me or whatever. But, 30, 40%, I still go after that same business model, which is, it's like they're having something. Let me pitch. I'll call it pitch. But I remember I put that fear behind me, right? That's what you all have to do. You have to sit there and put the fear behind you. Allow yourself to take the risk. Some of you are talking yourself out of ideas, and you don't need to do that. And only fear is the thing that's talking you into the idea, not taking action. It was the same thing it was doing to me. But that day, I remember so much things changed, and that became a cornerstone in how I've been able to build the business I've been able to build, is because I wasn't letting other people's fear dictate my actions of what I was going to do in business. You don't need to do that either. If you all, I'm offering something here, which is pretty simple. A complimentary overview call. I'm going to have a link. You can hit the link. It's like 4 questions to let me know, who you are, and, you're not some weirdo or something, okay? 4 questions, and I'm giving you 10 minutes. And if you have an idea, or you're having a sticking point in your business and you want to kind of deal with, you want to get ideas of how to deal with that. And it's not a 10-minute pitch fest, okay? It literally is, listen to what I give you, my insight of what I think of what you can do to either change or what you can do to help yourself, whatever the case is, okay? It's complimentary. It's a complimentary call, okay? 10 minutes. Hit the link, let me know. But you all sending in questions, the more questions you send in, the more things I can be able to answer. And definitely always remember that you got to put the fear behind you. Don't put it in front of you. Put the fear behind you and take action on whatever it is you want. More videos are coming. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this and it's helped you out, please let me know. I appreciate it. If you have questions, send them in. The more questions you send in, the more questions I can answer on these videos. I hope all of this helped you. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.